Boker Tov to everyone. Today's Daf Yomi is Gittin Daf Pei Vav. As we march through the tractate, only 5 more dafim to go until we conclude this beautiful Masechta. So, Gittin Pei Vav, 2 lines from the top, the Gemara tells us, Gufo shall get shich for Harei Ibat Chorin Harei Hila Harei Atatzmech. The essential get of emancipation, the document of emancipation is we say you are free or you are for yourself. Is Rav Yehuda Bishtar Zabine Da'avde? Rav Yehuda instituted that when somebody would sell their slaves, that they would say Avda Dinan Mutstaka Avdo. This slave, Avda Dinan, this slave, Mutstaka Avdo. He is free and clear to be a slave. Rashi says, "Ein shum ira b'mechira." There's no funny business going on with the sale. Upatir v'atir min chirurei u'min arurei u'min erurei malko malson. There's nobody has any claim against him. V'rasham de'inish lo isalayu, and there's no seal of a man on him. I mean, they used to put a mark. It was called kavla da'avda. They used to put on the person. U'menuka mikol mum u'min shlin, and he has no blemish. Dinafik aditztar chadas v'atak. Rashi says this means that I'm testifying that in the last 2 years, he didn't have any blemishes. There's certain illnesses that lasted 2 years. And Maya Svate, what's the way to heal that blemish if you would have it? Amarbani, Gimbara, Umaratcha, Vikavrisa, Vakawa, Dachamra, Umashcha, Dezesa. So you take some ginger, and you take some ginger. Then you take, Rashi says, the leftover of the silver. When you cut it, and you take some vinegar and olive oil and some white balsamic vinegar, and you smear it on him on the boil with this goose feather. Okay, now up to the next Mishnah. Gittin psulin. There are 3 types of Gittin that are disqualified. However, even though the get is disqualified, it's only rabbinically disqualified, and so therefore, we're going to say, in these days of Vlad kosher, that if one marries on this basis, the offspring is kosher. Kasav Ksavi, what are the 3 Gittin? Kasav Ksav Yado. He wrote in his own handwriting the name of Adam, and there's no witnesses to it. So technically speaking, biblically speaking, it's kosher, but rabbinically speaking, we're going to say it's disqualified. So if you marry, the offspring is kosher. There are witnesses, but there's no date on it. Or Yesh Bozman, there's a date. But there's only one witness. In all these cases, all these cases, these 3 Gittin are disqualified. In these states, and if one gets married on the basis of these 3 of this get, have Vlad kosher. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer says, even though there's no witnesses, it doesn't need witnesses on the get. If they were given in front of witnesses, it's kosher. The govim and the chasim shabbatim. It's so kosher you can use it to collect from property which had a lien on it. I mean to say you can even collect it from property that it's not in his possession. She'ino edim kosman al haget el meitikun olam. No reason why the witnesses sign on the get. Rabbi does not require it. Gemara says, "V'su'eka, are there really no more than these 3 cases where the get is disqualified, but if you get married on that basis, the offspring is a mamzer, the offspring is kosher. V'ayika get yashan." Gemara says, "What about the case of the get yashan, where he wrote the get, but he dated it, but before he gave it to her, he had seclusion with her?" Gemara says, "Hasam lo teitze." There, if he gets married to her, he doesn't have to leave the marriage. Hacha teitze. Here, he has to leave it. The Gemara says, "Well, that's a dispute. I'm a base. There is a position that says that he has to leave from one of these 3 Gittin that she has to leave. According to the sheet that says she doesn't have to leave. What would we say? So the Gemara says, "Hasam tinasel chatfila." Well, in that case, in the case of the get yashan, if she was actually divorced with it, she can then go ahead and get married even with chatzlilah, even at the outset. But here, it's only diabet. If she get married, then the offspring is kosher. But you could get kireach. What about this bald get? We're reviewing all the Maselcha now, where they didn't sign, where the witnesses didn't sign one of the lines. So the get for a Cohen's wife was folded over. Husband of one mamzer. No, that case is different because there the offspring is a mamzer and half of kosher. Here the offspring is kosher. Yeah, but Rabbi Meir, that's good according to Rabbi Meir, who says that the offspring is a mamzer in that circumstance. Oh, Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, who said that the offspring is not a mamzer, in that case, make a memer. So what would the Rabbanan say? Hasam Tates, Yachal Tates. Rabbanan would say in that case she has to leave the marriage. Here we wouldn't require it. According to the one who says we have to leave, she would have to leave here. What would be the case? What would be the difference? Where it says the Makusha will come marry. Okay, that's a different type of get because that's a get specifically for a Kohen. Our mission is not referring to that. What about the fact that we said that you have to write the welfare of the king in it? And if you didn't write it, then it's not a valid get. Well, Hasam Tates there, if she'd have to leave the marriage. Here she went. So according to the position that says here that she'd have to leave, what would you say? Gemara says, Mukim Waki the Rabbi Meir. Okay, we're going to have to say that our mission is like Rabbi Meir. Hasam Devad Mamzer. Hacha Devad Kosher. So Rabbi Meir would say in that case, where the case of where you change Shlom Malchus, since you change the format of the get, he's going to say it's a mamzer. But in our case, Rabbi Meir is saying the offering is kosher. So the Gemara is minyana the ratio mutimai, minyana the seifel mutimai. In the first clause of the Mishnah, it says there are 3 gittin or psuin, and then also at the end it says arei elu shlosh gittin psuin. So why does it have to list the 3? You can count to 3. We see that there are 3 cases. So why does it have to say in the Mishnah there are 3 in the beginning and then there are 3 in the end? So the Gemara explains minyana the ratio mutei hani da amran. So it's coming to exclude these other cases, the case of the Get Kireach, the case of the Shlom Malchus, the case of the Get Yashan. The Seifel Mutei Hadatanya, it's to exclude the following case. And maybe Get Venus Ayam, Nos no level, Omar, Befani Nachum, you don't see that one mom to give her a mayor. A mayor says in that case, if you didn't say Befani Nachum, your offspring is a mamzer. Chamam ain't have one mamzer. But in that case, Chum says it's not a mamzer. In that case, where you didn't say funny nachtam, Rabbi Meir says there it's a mamzer. Okay, so the Gemara then says, according to Chachamim, what does he have to do? You should take it back from Rabbi Yachsu. So that's what he has to do. Hold on 1 second. Now to the next piece, because of Aveidim. So one of the 3 Gittin is, the first one is if he wrote it in his own handwriting and there's no witnesses on it. So Amarav Ksav Yadoshin. So Rav said about our Mishnah, this is the case if he wrote it in his own hand. Now, what's Rav? That's a strange statement from Rav. What's that referring to? What's Rav referring to? If it's the first of the 3 cases where he wrote it in his own handwriting and he gave it over without witnesses, well, that can't be what Rav's referring to. Because it said specifically, he wrote in his own handwriting. So you want to say it refers to the second case. What's the second case? There are witnesses, but there's no date on it. So, well, what do we care if it's in his own handwriting? There are witnesses there, so it doesn't matter if it's his own handwriting. What's the concluding clause? There's a date. There's only 1 witness. So there we say if it's in his own handwriting, it's disqualified. But if it's prescribed, in addition to the witness, would be okay. So on top of paper, when do we say it's a problem? If it's his own signature, if it's his own script with the witness. But if the scribe would write with the witness, then we would say under those circumstances, according to Rabbi Meir, the Mishnah is not saying that the offspring is kosher, but according to Rabbi Meir, the offspring would be a mamzer. In a case where there was one witness and the scribe, then Rabbi Meir would say the offspring is a mamzer. But in the case where it's one witness and he himself wrote it, Rabbi Meir would say that the blood is kosher. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, I feel kasav sofer ve'ed. Shmuel says, no, even if a scribe with the witness wrote it, we'll say the offspring is kosher, Sharei Shanino, because we learned in the Mishnah, which we're going to, God willing, get to on Pei Zayin Amud Beis, where we learned that we say kasav sofer ve'ed kosher. There it says specifically that if the sofer wrote it and one witness signed it, it's kosher. So therefore, Shmuel argues with Rav. Rav says if it's his writing, the offspring is kosher. But Shmuel says no. If the scribe writes it with the witness, then it's kosher. Rav Midami. Rav says that case there from the Mishnah, Pei Zayin Amud Beis is not the same. There, from the fact that it says kasav sofer ve'ed kosher, it implies lichatchila, even initially, that the get is kosher, because there the witness, the scribe signed it with the witness. Therefore, that case is totally different. Here, this is the case of diavad. So what we're saying here is that only if the husband wrote it is it kosher, but if the scribe wrote it, it's disqualified. Because the scribe was only one witness signing it, the scribe didn't sign it. Shmuel says no. Shmuel says no. I don't agree with the answer that Rabbi Yirmiyah gave about the Mishnah, which we're going to get to in 87b, where he says that case is referring to it, the scribe signed it with the witness. I don't agree with Rabbi Yirmiyah. It means that case is talking about where the scribe wrote it and he didn't sign it. And what's the reason why we're saying it's kosher? It's because it's an expert scribe, and he's an expert in the laws of Gittin, and he must have heard from the husband that he was supposed to sign it. He must have heard from the husband that he was supposed to write it. So that's why we're going to say it's kosher. That's why we're going to say it's kosher. So the Gemara says, Amalei Rebbe Lazar, So too Rabbi Yochanan says that we learned this with respect to that. So this case where Rav said, that's the case where there's witnesses and Amrulei Seifa. And he says, no, it refers to the last case where there's only one witness. That's where Rav says that the offspring is kosher, according to our Mishnah, because he wrote with his own handwriting. One second. Let me just go back for a second. Hold on 1 second. Okay, now the Gemara continues. Sometimes Rav said that a woman who got married with one of these Gittin has to leave the marriage. And sometimes Rav says she doesn't have to leave. Okay, she has children from this marriage, we don't force her to leave. But if she didn't have children, we force her to leave. Kiddushin or Safek Kirushin, Areo Cholzos Woman Siam. This takes us back to Yavamos, going back to the very beginning of Nashim. Yavamos, the first stuff, that if a woman falls to Yibum, and her husband's brother was married to somebody who's prohibited, Sarah, she's a relative, somehow she can't be married to her husband's brother, then she goes out without any Yibum or Chalitza. But if that Sarah, this co-wife, was somebody who was, as our Mishnah there said, if they had, we're not sure if they were married, or we're not sure if they're divorced, then the woman who falls to Yibum does Chalitza and not Yibum. Ariel Cholzos will eat this Yamos. They're not allowed to get married, they just have to do Chalitza. Creates that Safek Kedushin. What's an example of Safek Kedushin? That's, we're not sure if they're married. Zarakol Kedushin, Karvua, Safek Karvua, Safek Karvua. He threw her something to betroth her, but we're not sure if it's closer to him or to her. No Safek Kedushin. Safek Gerushin, what's the case of a doubtful divorce? Kasav B'Ksavya. He wrote it with his own handwriting. Ve'eno of Edim. There's no witnesses. Ve'yesho of Edim, or there's witnesses. Ve'en Bozman. And there's no date. Yesh Bozman, Ve'en Bo Ela Eid Echad, Hareza Safek Gerushin. All these three cases of our Mishnah. And if you want to say, like Rav is saying, that she doesn't have to leave the marriage under these circumstances, then, and this is clear a case, obviously, where there's no children, and Rav said, where there's no children, she has to leave. If you say, if you want to say, Tzarasa Asili Vume. But in this case, the Tzara, divorced, and if she has no children, then we're going to say, if you're saying in these circumstances, Safek Gerushin, that she doesn't leave, then Sarasa Asili Ume. Then the co-wife really should fall to Yibum, what Rashi says. Sarasa Asili Ume. If you're going to say, if she got married with this get, she doesn't leave it, then under these circumstances, the co-wife, the one who's falling to Yibam, she really should come along and do the Yibam. But she's not a co-wife, and so therefore she should come and do Yibam. Why does the Mishnah say she does chalitza? So Gemara says Tisyarim. Okay, let's say she comes along and does yibam. It's not really anything chashasha de rabbanon, because it's really just a rabbinic concern, because really, technically speaking, it's a valid get. So really, she can do yibam. So Gemara says Levi Amar Olam Loteitze. Levi says no. Actually, technically speaking, in these circumstances, if she got married, she shouldn't leave the relationship. So Rabbi Yochanan was teaching the children of Rav Lafta from Minhuna, and he said, your father said that if she got married under this, she doesn't leave, even if she has no children. And then once he's telling them stuff that their father said, he said, Sheba Amir, Eina Poselas B'Mechatas. So he said the caratus is a type of fly that was found amongst the bundles, that if it drinks from the red heifer, we don't think it dribbles back its water, which would disqualify the water of the red heifer. So then it's not going to disqualify the mechatas. The water of the red heifer cannot have been drunk from an animal because it dribbles back. But in this case, we don't think it disqualifies it. The Gemara says, really? But how could that be my caratus? What is this caratus? This is a fly that stays amongst the bundles. So all the birds disqualify the water of the red heifer, the mayim chayim, except for the dove, which it sucks up the water and doesn't dribble back the water to go into the utensil. Because we learned to the Mishnah in Para that any animal that drinks from the water of the red heifer disqualifies it because they throw up back into it. And and so therefore it loses its status as a mechatas. So if that's the case, then it's mion of the kartis. It should have listed also the kartis. Where it says lo psikale, because the case of the kartis is not a clear case. The gedola lo pasla, the katana pasla, because if it's a large kartis, it doesn't disqualify. But if it's a small one, it does disqualify. What's the size of the small one? That it doesn't disqualify. Until the size of an olive, it doesn't disqualify. Until the size of an olive, it does disqualify. Rabbi Lazar says that you only need witnesses to the handing over, not to sign it. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Lazar, but Gittin, the law is like Rabbi Lazar. Can't reach Kamei Shmuel. Amar Rav B'Shtaros. Even by regular contracts, the law is like Rabbi Lazar that you don't need witnesses to sign. Rav Savar B'Shtaros law. Does Rav say the law is not like Rabbi Lazar by contracts? So Al-Tatani, if you go in Chasim Shabbatim, it says in our Mishnah, the base of this testimony, she could collect that the creditors can use the get to collect her ksuba from. She could go to collect her ksuba from property that was taken in Chasim Shabbatim. Rabbi Lazar Tarati Amar. Rabbi Lazar said two things. Rav holds like him. It's valid by a get, but he argues with him by other contracts. Yaakov Aridi Amar Rabbi Yoshua. Hold on 1 second. Right. Rabbi Yana says a few get. He says, no, I totally disagree with Rabbi Lazar. It doesn't even have the smell of the get. Rabbi Yana not agree. Here, he says, according to Rabbana, feel reach again. According to rabbis, it's not even the smell of the get. Rabbi Yochanan says, I feel reach again, but it's not even the smell of the get. Rabbi Yochanan always say to Rabbi Lazar. I want to say Rabbi Yochanan does not agree with Rabbi Lazar. So this is what it means. Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, I feel reach again, but it doesn't even have the smell of the get. Shochlei Rav Abba Bar Zavil Mari Bar Mar Bayim Minei Mirabuna. Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin or not? So like Rabbi Lazar Gittin or not? What's the law? So the Gemara tells us. In the meantime, Rabbi died. I'm like Rabbi Bray. Hachi Am Rabbi Mishmei the Rabbi. So this is what my father said. Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin. Rabbi Sinan Bakim the Bar Allah Mishum Rabbeinu Amru Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin. It was like Rabbi Lazar Gittin. Damar Rav Cham Bar Guri Amar Rabbi Lazar Gittin. It was like her. Ikadamri v'chavereinu abikim b'dvar halacha. Our friends who are experts in halacha. The Talmidei Rabbeinu Mishum Rabbeinu Amru Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin. So there were some people. There were a class of people who were experts in halacha. Chavereinu abikim b'dvar halacha. You see, from here, not everybody has to be an expert in everything. So they rely on the people who are the experts in halacha. Talmidei Rabbeinu Mishum Rabbeinu Amru Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin. Damar Rav Chisda Amar Rav Cham Bar Guri Amar Rav Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin. Thank you, Asar Rav and Amar Rabbi Lazar Amar Rav Allah Rabbi Lazar Gittin. It was like Rabbi Lazar Gittin. Okay, we go on because we have a few more minutes. We just stopped recording. I'll record the rest tomorrow.